Hey, what's up? This is Shataki from Web Curious. In this video, I will introduce you to web development. So let's first know what is web development. It is basically the work involved in building and maintaining websites. And as you know, websites are always accessed within a network, be it in a public or a private network. Now let's see how things work. In any network, there is potentially a more powerful computer known as server, and it is connected to all other computers within the network. This server contains all the necessary files of any website, and all the other computers, which are known as clients, access those files with the help of web browsers. But in a public network, there are a number of servers located at different locations. Now, if you want to access any particular website, how would your computer know that in which servers the required files are present? And even if you get connected to the server, how would the server know that to which client computer the files are to be sent? To solve this, each device in the network is assigned a unique address known as IP address, and it is unique worldwide. Now, when you want to access any website, you directly or indirectly search for names like www.xyz.com in the URL bar. These are known as host names. After hitting the search button, your browser searches for the host name, which is indirectly the IP address of the server, and then fetch those required files from it and render them. Before fetching the files, your browser checks for the file transfer protocol for the website, which is generally HTTPS, and sets the value of the URL bar as https://www.xyz.com. This whole string of the URL bar is called web address or Universal Resource Locator, shortly URL. And in this URL, xyz.com is known as domain name. This is basically the name which points towards a particular IP address, which is of a server. So if I take a domain name as xyz.com, I can point it towards the server with IP as 192.10.0.1, and this name cannot be further assigned to any other IP address. Now, if you search for www.xyz.com in your browser will try to connect with the server with IP address 192.10.0.1. After getting connected to the server, it will send the required files to your computer after identifying your computer's IP address. And then your browser will render those files and display in front of you. I hope the whole thing is clear to you. But just don't worry about this too much, as most of the things are just a bit extra information to make you more clear. You will get to know the required things as we go along. Now, a website can be of two kinds, static and dynamic. A static website is basically a website where we just see informations which are already provided and cannot interact with them. It is just like any card or a page of a book showing some information. A dynamic website, on the other hand, has the ability to interact with the data. For example, Facebook. Here you can see information, upload information, change some data by clicking a button, etc. Now, in any website development, the development is divided into three categories: Frontend Development, Backend Development, and Full Stack Development. Don't worry, I will explain them to you in a very easy way. Let's start with the Frontend Development first. So Frontend Development is basically when a developer deals with the client-side things. That means everything that you can see and do as a user from your computer on a website. Every website should have good user interface that includes navigation bar, headings, paragraphs, lists, buttons, colors and different images, animations, etc. and must be responsive and interactive. All the things that is needed to be done to fulfill these criteria are the job of a front-end developer. Although you might divide your work to multiple people for your ease of work if you are an independent ones, but if you are working under a company, most of the time you have to do a small part and not the whole front end. Now to build all of these, you need to learn these three languages: HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And these are the basic requirements to build any website. So let's see why we need to learn these three languages. First, HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Note that it's a markup language and not a programming language. HTML is used to build up the skeleton of any web page. You can just compare it to the skeleton of a human body. Writing headings, paragraphs, lists, and creating buttons, drop-down menus, etc. all are done using HTML. Next, CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. This is a styling language which is used to stylize different elements that we put up on a web page using HTML. It describes how different HTML elements should be displayed on a web page. We can define different properties such as setting font color, background color, font size, paddings, margins, and many other things that you can think of to make a web page look more beautiful and appealing. And lastly, JavaScript. It is a scripting language and shortly known as JS. It is used to add dynamicity to a web page on the client side. For example, you can change the content of any HTML element when a button is clicked, or change styling of an element when mouse pointer is hovered on it, and many more that you can think of as an interactive. Also, it is used for simple operations with data and elements on the client side where there is no need to access data from the backend. Although JavaScript can now be used in the backend development, we need separate setup for that. So here I gave the overview of these basic languages required, and I will talk about all these in much detail when I start tutorial series on all of these. Now in today's generation, websites are not simply built using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. It is because building modern websites using only these languages is a hell lot of a task for anyone and is not feasible for less time limit. For that, front-end developers use modern front-end technologies such as different JS libraries and frameworks. For example, React.js, AngularJS, etc. to build out the front-end more easily and quickly, and also to add more dynamicity. Okay, let me not put everything in an introduction video. Let's skip them for other video. Now let's talk about backend development. Backend development is when a developer deals with the server side or the backend part of any website. They build the connection between the websites on the client side and databases on the server side for storing and fetching data to and from the databases. Using backend languages, data from the client side is sent, processed, and stored in a database on the server and vice versa. Languages like PHP, Perl, etc. are used for the backend, but modern backend developments use different backend frameworks like Django, Flask, etc. with Python language, or runtime environments like Node.js with JavaScript, which gives benefit over learning multiple languages in the development field. And full stack development is when a developer develops both the front-end and the backend part of a website. They need to learn different technologies for both front-end and backend development, and they are one of the highest paid in the world. Just don't worry about all these languages or frameworks I have mentioned now. I will dive into all of them sequentially. For now, all you need is to understand the concept. And by now, you must have guessed that the files for the front-end are fundamentally HTML, CSS or JavaScript files, and for the backend they may be PHP, Perl or Python, etc. So I hope the concept is clear to you, but for your more better understanding, let me clear up the whole scenario with an example. Suppose you want to open a Facebook account and do several activities it allows you to do. So you search for www.facebook.com on your website. Your browser then searches for the server with hostname facebook.com in the World Wide Web and gets connected to it and retrieve the files for the Facebook web app or basically website. Your browser then renders those files and display in front of you. Then you just go to the sign up form and fill up all the details like your name, email address, phone number, etc. and get signed up by clicking on the sign up button. Everything you get to see when navigating through the Facebook web app is done by the front-end developers. Be it a color of a button or size of a heading or some animations going on when you click on something. Now after clicking on the sign up button, everything that happens like getting the values you entered, passing those values to a separate program file, which in turn is used to insert the data to the database, which is basically storing the data, belongs to the backend part of the development. And after you created your account, you just enter the login credentials to get logged into your account. So the entering of the login credentials is done on the front end part of the website, and the login process by checking the credentials from the database and fetching all the other details that relates to the account are done on the backend part of the website. And now you can do several activities on the front end part of the Facebook website, and all the records will be stored or fetched to or from the Facebook's database with the help of backend files. So I hope the whole concept of web development is clear to you and what you need to do as a web developer. It is basically creating those files and create interaction between them to make a website fully functional. And now we will dive into the actual development starting with HTML, CSS and JavaScript from the next video onwards. So thank you for watching this video. If you just enjoyed this video, make sure to like this video, otherwise dislike the video, and also do subscribe this channel and set the bell notification to all. Meet you in the next video.